Right, we've got a quorum already, so may I now call the meeting to order. So item 1 on the agenda, meeting with deputations and the administration. We only have one deputation today. So after we've met our only deputation, we will continue with our meeting. With us today, we have Mr. Lau Kong-wah, Acting Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs, Mr. Gordon Leung, Deputy Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs, Ms. Helen Chong, Principal Assistant Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs, and Mr. Henry Chan, Acting Senior Government Counsel. So the first part of this meeting is meeting with deputations. We only have one deputation today, and he is an old friend of ours. So Mr. KWOK, I believe you know the rules. But I still need to remind you, Mr. KWOK, that what you say will not be covered by the Electoral Powers and Privileges Ordinance. And you will be given 3 minutes. And after you've spoken, I'll ask our members whether they have got anything to ask you. And then Mr. Lau will give some response. All right, 3 minutes, Mr. KWOK. Before I speak, I want to clarify one point concerning the election miscellaneous amendments to 2014. I would like to know whether the deferred election arrangements also apply to DC election. What do you mean? In the 2014 legislation, it is said that if there is any delay, then the election will take place not on the next working day, but rather on the following Sunday. So I just want to know whether DC elections will also be affected. But then this meeting is about election expenses. But because the deferment of the election may affect election expenses. Now, for electoral elections, there are dozens of polling stations, but then for district council elections, there may only be 1 or 2. Say if there is only 1 polling station, and if the election is deferred for 1 week, that will have implications on the election expenses. So I just want to know whether the legislation also affects or applies to district council elections. I think you can continue with your submission. You mean the arrangements will not apply to district council elections? I mean district council election expenses will not be affected. But in reality, Chairman, election expenses will increase. Say, if I have to canvass for votes for 7 more days, even if I just use a loud hailer and try to canvass for votes on the street, I have to pay for the battery, and the cost of the battery will count towards election expenses. My understanding is that the arrangements will affect district council elections, but I don't think the arrangements will affect electoral elections too much. Yes, I understand that we have never had a deferment of the district council election. I just want to know whether district council elections will also be affected. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. KWOK. You are worried that the election expenses may increase if the election is deferred. Right, do members have any questions for Mr. KWOK? Or should I now invite the administration to give a brief response? Any questions? No? Yes, Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. I think Mr. KWOK is concerned about the deferment or postponement of the election day and whether election expenses will be increased as a result. Now, I want to say that we have to be fair to all candidates as far as election expenses are concerned. And so we have no intention to increase the limit or the ceiling under such circumstances. Mr. KWOK, as far as I understand, for election expenses, we're mainly talking about the publicity materials. And for the volunteers, they are not paid. If candidates need to pay for the workers, then they would definitely exceed the election expenses limit. In fact, we rely on Kai Fongs to help us carry out our electioneering activities. I think you do know the election arrangements very well. And then concerning the election expenses, we are here talking about an increase to the election expenses limit. So do you have anything further to add, Mr. KWOK? Thank you. On polling day, can you please refrain from placing the earpiece near to the microphone? Now, on polling day, a lot of expenses have to be incurred, and this is true for both the Democrats and the pro-establishment candidates. And, pro-establishment candidates do have a lot of volunteers. And so on polling day, they have to pay for the meals and the drinks of the volunteers. But then for the candidates from Democratic camp, they do not have too many volunteers on polling day. And so if polling day is put back, then candidates will not be able to have money to spend or to spend money on polling day, because if they do so, they will exceed the election expenses limit. All right, thank you very much, Mr. KWOK, for coming today. Thank you. I think we can continue with our meeting. So, members, do you have any questions or comments concerning the order and the amendment regulation? Ms. Emily Lau, Chairman. I wish to ask a question about the subsidy under the financial assistance scheme. Now, the rate will be increased from $12 to $14. I understand that you want to help the candidates. You want more candidates, or want people to be able to stand in an election. So, is it that the subsidy rate should be increased further? Secretary, Ms. Emily Lau has been reminding us of this concerning the subsidies for candidates. Last time, I told members that in fact there was no subsidy initially, but then in the light of members' views, a subsidy was provided, and this present adjustment will be adjusted in accordance with cumulative inflation, and it's going to be $14 instead of $12 per vote. So we're not proposing any major changes. The adjustment takes into account cumulative inflation. But I want to know how you've come up with the rate of $14. So in fact, there is no real increase. The adjustment is made on the basis of cumulative inflation. So my question is whether you think there's a need to increase the real subsidy rate. In fact, the government has the money, but is it that in terms of your policy you don't want to provide too much subsidy? Now, initially, the subsidy rate was $10. After discussion, it was felt that $10 was appropriate, and as a result, later the rate was adjusted to $12, and now we are proposing to adjust the rate to $14 in accordance with inflation rate. All right, $10 per vote. At that time, there could be 2 rounds of free mail. Chairman, in fact, Chairman, you are correct. In fact, in providing the subsidy rate, the government was able to save some money. At that time, there was the consensus that some subsidy should be given to the candidates, and then it was said that from the environmental protection point of view, the number of mail service rounds could be reduced by 1. And I would like to say that Mr. Paul Chair did make an excellent point. Let the candidates choose. You know, some people take the publicity leaflets from the letter boxes and throw them away immediately. So give candidates a choice, and I believe most candidates will not opt for the extra round of mail delivery service. We made this suggestion a long time ago, but it seems that our suggestion has fallen on deaf ears. Secretary. Chairman, I want to say that many candidates still prefer to have their publicity materials sent to voters by mail. Some members, including Ms. Lau, have said that in fact nowadays email is becoming more and more popular. So candidates, I want to say, still prefer to have their publicity pamphlets mailed to their voters. And what if a candidate opts for the email option? So the free mail delivery service will not be provided. Is that right?
It's not really a choice. Well, if the candidate chooses to use postage by electronic form, then it won't be postal service. Well, it's either one or the other, electronic form or proper postal service. Well, the subsidy has to be increased because without any free mail service, then the election expenses will go through the roof. Of course, it's a package. Mr. Christopher Chung. I think the extent of increase, that is the $2, is really small. And you have adopted the CCPI cumulative increase of 17.3%. We're doing publicity. It's not like buying rice, cooking oil, and the usual giveaways we do. Well, before any election, we have to have publicity materials like banners and leaflets made, and they're very expensive. Can there be a review mechanism? We have this rebate for 2 terms. Is it time for this to be reviewed to see whether it should follow this CCPI or should a weight be given to it? We've only used a limited number of items, say publicity material, and you see the material cost has increased by a large extent. Undersecretary. The rate of increase follows an actual cumulative increase, actually, of the inflation. Have you considered a review? A regular review, maybe? Any plans? Undersecretary. There can always be a review, but so far we think this formula is appropriate and is adjusted in accordance with the increase in CCPI. The actual fact is that when it comes to publicity material, the cumulative increase is more than 17.3%. So we need a review to see if that's sufficient. Undersecretary. I think Mr. Chung should consider, other than the increase from $12 to $14, we have adjusted the election expenses limit, EEL, as well. It used to be $53,000. and is adjusted in accordance with the CCPI to $63,000. When we proposed the increase, we heard that with an increase in election expenses, the burden on an individual or political parties may be heavier. It may discourage certain individuals or parties from running in an election. I don't think you need to consider that because it can be done as you wish. You can be frugal in your election campaign, or you can be generous. If you use 17.3%, you have actually reduced the limit because the cost of material used has seen an increase that is more than the CCPI. So the limit is actually smaller for us. Say, for example, 4 years ago, I could have 20,000 copies produced, and today the cost will increase by more than 17%. Or if I stick to the 17%, I cannot produce the same amount of copies. Undersecretary, if you propose some other method instead of the CCPI, perhaps Mr. Chung, you can come up with a better solution, because we need to rely on something, and we think this is an objective indicator. Mr. Pote, and I think it is first of all down to the policy. Other than inflation, shall we consider the need to encourage more public-spirited people to run? So it should be more than the increase in accordance with the CCPI. And let me declare that my better half is an incumbent district councillor, and I can't rule out the possibility that she'll run again. The policy should be there to encourage people to run in an election. And just like what Ms. Lau said about the electronic form, in a buffet with so many selections, people will eat more. And if you have to order a la carte, then you will choose only what you want. The free postal service, if you choose not to have it, you can't get anything in its stead. You're only encouraging people to waste more trees. It's not long before the end of a term. Perhaps, Chairman, when you were running, then you would have been more active in considering, Undersecretary, if you were running, then you would have been more active in pursuing a better solution. So what about the free mail delivery? Can it be encashed so that candidates can choose a mail service that is more suited to them, or one that is more convenient, say for example in electronic form? As I said, that whether it's postal service or email is for the candidate to choose. But sorry, I interrupt you. Once you've made the choice, and if you opt not for the postal service, then you won't get the money in its stead. And of course, since you don't want to see it go to waste, you would choose to have it because you either have it or not. You can't get it in cash or expenses. Or unless for certain candidates, doing it green is a selling point. Otherwise, everyone will use the free delivery service. So if it can be done on an accountable basis, then it may be a better option. And the Secretary, I was talking about a choice. From the perspective of environmental protection, of course, the candidate can choose to do it electronically, and quite a number of candidates still prefer postal service. But the preference is because of the accountable basis. If it's taken away, see how many candidates will still choose that. You will see the real choice of people. You're actually giving them an incentive to use it, whether they like it or not, because there is the subsidy available. Under Secretary, maybe you'll let me answer you first. You hear me out first. You said that once you have chosen an email, doing it by email, then you won't get the free mail service. When you get the list, maybe for some, it will be done by email and others not. It's just that you don't have the address label anymore if you use electronic form. Yes, that's right. You can choose. The two choices are available. Once you've got the list, you can choose to have the material in printed form by post sent to voters. You have one round of free mail delivery service. And if you choose not to use it, I think according to Mr. Tse, it can be encashed or and given to them in the form of subsidy to encourage people not to use it. But I haven't answered I've said that there is a choice from the perspective of environmental protection, but for the perspective of users, that is voters, quite a number of voters prefer to receive a hard copy, although we have changed the arrangement. Well, for the same household, instead of sending to individual materials to 5 voters, it will be 1 copy only. Mr. Tse mentioned about turning it into a subsidy, and it's nothing to do with environmental protection. Yes, it does, because you don't need to use hard copies. Then in a way it's environmental protection. But from the figures we have, quite a number of people still prefer a hard copy. And I think what you said is to not give candidates that choice. No, it's whatever that suits you. If you prefer the conventional way, then you can choose to. But now there is actually no choice, because according to the policy, people of course will choose the conventional way because they don't get anything, they don't get any benefit by opting not to. Mr. Tse, perhaps you'll wait for the second round. Ms. Lau, well, you won't get anywhere if you're talking to the wall. I think you should be more flexible. Yes, the EEL has been adjusted. Well, now you said it's 63,000, and at the same time you provide 1 round of free mail service. It's an expense, so it's actually the same pool. You need to give candidates a choice, and it also encourages innovation and creativity, because it's rather old-fashioned to just have something printed and sent. There are other ways to reach out to your voters. I've been saying this for many years, but all my words have been fallen on deaf ears. The financial assistance scheme, there are different forms. One is a multiplication of the subsidy rate by the number of valid votes cast, and the 50% of the EEL or the declared election expenses, that is the actual amount spent, the lowest of the above. Is it still the same arrangement? Yes. So you see how mean it is. You can only change one word, the highest of the 3, then more assistance will be given. What you're actually saying that you don't actually want to give more assistance. Under Secretary, I remember that in the panel, Ms. Lau mentioned it as well. It's just like I'm a broken record. Why don't we simply get the recording of the panel and play it? It will save a lot of electricity and time. What I was trying to say is that we have heard what you said, and we have carefully considered your proposal. Ms. Lau's proposal is that currently is the lowest of these amount, and her proposal is to have it done the highest. And we have identified the problems by adopting the highest amount. We would like to provide as financial assistance to candidates, and at the same time the candidates should bear some cost. So it's not fully provided by the government, because by doing so there will be a lot of problems. That is one of the reasons. Another is that it's the use of public money. So we need to consider public interest. And thirdly, if we use the highest, then maybe some unintended situation that we don't want to see. Say, for example, 3,000 people voted. Currently, the threshold is about 5%. That is the subsidy rate, the subsidy. So 150 people out of the 3,000. If someone wants to do it, once he signs up, we will give them the highest of the three. That means it will be $31,000.
In other words, so long as he becomes a candidate and gets 150 votes, then irrespective of his election expenses, he will get $31,000. So that's not right from the point of view of the use of public money. And so we may encourage people to do this, especially in small constituencies. So does Ms. Lau want to see this happen? So we think this is not the right thing to do. Ms. Lau, I hope to encourage more people to stand in elections. So on this, I may not hold the same view as you do. Now, if one gets 150 votes, and that will exceed the 5% threshold, according to your calculations, how much money will he get? $31,000. I mean, according to your formula, how much will he get? 150 times 14. 150 times 14. So over $1,000. That's the lowest. But then, according to your formula, irrespective of the expenses he incurs, he will definitely be able to pocket $31,000, and that's not right in our view. So, but then you do require that the expenses have to have been incurred. Now here we're talking about the lowest out of the three. $150 votes, $14. That would mean $2,100. But if he can get to the highest of the three, then that would mean 50% of 61,000. In other words, he will be able to pocket $30,500. That's going to be the scenario if he can get the highest of the three instead of the lowest of the three. Yes, I understand. Then that would mean that he doesn't have to do anything. He'll just have to secure 100 odd votes, and he'll be able to get over $30,000. But I want to say that we really have to encourage people to stand, more people to stand in elections. In fact, people only get back the expenses they've actually incurred. They don't really pocket any money as such. I think the scenario you have outlined is an extreme case. In fact, according to your formula, the people have already incurred expenses and they only get back some of the money that they have spent, and the subsidy that they get is rather small. So perhaps you can design a scheme to plug the loophole, but at the same time, you should try to provide a high level of subsidy for the candidates. The situation now is that candidates incur a lot of expenditure and they only get back a very small amount under the financial assistance scheme. But But you know, the scheme came into being in 2004, and there hasn't been any real increase. The rate has been adjusted only in line with inflation. Secretary, yes, I understand that Ms. Lau wants the government to try to help the candidates more, but then we also have to be very careful about the use of public money. Now, if we do not carry out the adjustment in accordance with the CCPI, then what should be the basis for the adjustment? We are open to members' suggestions. Mr. Paul Chair, no questions? Right, so let me state my view. I think giving the candidates the lowest of the three is appropriate. In fact, the highest level will be 50% of the EEL. Say in my constituency, I got 2,700 votes. So $58,000. So, and I was only able to get back $29,000. But then 2,700 votes times $12 will mean that I will be able to get over $30,000. So I can't really get the full amount of $12 for my 2,700 votes. So I think if there is to be a review, then the review should be on whether it should be 50% of the EEL. Of course, the government has to also consider the implications on public money. But I think candidates do need to know that they have to incur a reasonable level of expenses. All right, do members have any further questions? Miss Emily Lau. All right, $12 per vote. That's okay, but then you have to you will only give candidates the lowest of the three. Yes, you're saying that this is public money, but I think it's okay if you say the candidates will get $12 per vote, but then you are only giving the candidates the lowest of the three, and that's really a bit too harsh. In fact, I've said this many times. Initially, there was no subsidy, and the subsidy has been increased. So I don't agree that the government is being too harsh. Now, in fact, there has not been any real increase. We have only had adjustments in line with inflation or cumulative inflation, so there hasn't been any real increase in the rate. But then, if the EEL is increased to more than $63,100, then some may complain that candidates who do not have a lot of means will suffer a disadvantage. But I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about the subsidy, not the EEL. All right, I think we can now start clause-by-clause scrutiny. So let's use the marked up copy. It's paper CB2 1155 bracket 01. So who can take us through the content of the subsidiary legislation? Ms. Chung. Yes, Chairman. Concerning the subsidy rate, we need to amend Schedule 7 of the District Council's Ordinance. We're going to have a District Council election at the end of this year, and the term will start from the 1st of January next year. And you can see that we've proposed an amendment to Schedule 7. So you can see that the rate of financial assistance for an election of a member for the term of office of a district council ending on the 31st of December this year is $12, and then for an election of a member for any subsequent term of office of a district council, $14. All right? So $12 for this term. Can you please clarify? If there is a by-election for this term of the district council, then the subsidy rate will still be $12. But then from the next term, the subsidy rate will be $14. Now, because the commencement date will be the 8th of May. But then, before the 8th of May, there may be a need to have a by-election. And if that's the case, then the rate will be $12. I would like to know when you will decide not to hold a by-election 4 months before the end of the term. That's in the legislation. In fact, it's 4 months from the start date of the next term, and the next term will start on the 1st of January 2016. Legal advisor? Thank you, Chairman. Now, because it mentions the district council term, and in fact, is it the term of office of a district council or the term of office of the elected members? In fact, we wrote to the government to seek clarification, and we know that in fact it's the term of office of the elected members, and in fact, this wording would not give rise to any problem in our view. So it seems that the administration does not agree. D of J, please. Thank you, Chairman. We are grateful to the assistant legal advisor for her view. We wrote back to her. We said that there shouldn't be a problem of interpretation. So if from now till September a by-election has to be held, then the subsidy rate is $12, and B is about the subsequent term of office. We don't think there is any problem with regard to interpretation. We think the drafting and the wording are in order. Now, for the term of office of a district council, of course, there is no difficulty understanding it. But then, concerning term of office of elected members, again, we don't think there is a problem with the interpretation. All right, next page.
Ms. Chung? Next is the adjustment to the maximum amount of election expenses. It is done through the maximum amount of election expenses District Council Election Regulation, Cap 554 Subleg C. The $53,800, just like the arrangements above, is amended in two parts. That is, for the term of office ending on the 31st of December 2015 is kept at $53,800, and for subsequent terms of office is $63,100. Any questions? Mr. Porter? It's just a comparison of the drafting. Is it the case that in the past this two-part approach has been adopted, or is it just for this occasion? I know that there is the consideration of by-election, and if the effective date is pushed to after the 8th of May, then there is no need to break it into two parts, and I see that is not a previous practice. Under Secretary, I will defer to Ms. Chan. Mr. Tse's observation is correct. The previous practice is to just change the figures with the effective date, as I recall, to the last day when a by-election may take place, say for example August this year. There is a merit to this new approach. There may be a need to have a by-election, say in August this year, and subsidies will have to be issued. The payment or the work related to it may not be completed before the end of August. It may still be ongoing in September, so there is an uncertainty. People may wonder whether the new figure or the old figure is to be adopted when it's dealt with in September. We think that it will be clearer being drafted this way by stating that for old election within the same term, then the old amount will be applied, and for the new term, the new figure will be applied. It will be clearer, and it also reduces the chance of argument. Mr. Tse, has there been any difficulties in the operations of the old formula? It's not that I object to this new elaborate way. Mr. Chan, as far as I know, there is none. You can ask the Bureau, but as far as I know, there has not been any operational difficulties encountered, perhaps because there has not been any by-elections close to that cut-off time. But we have considered this possibility, and for the sake of clarity, we have adopted this approach. Is also agreed by the Bureau. Under Secretary, as Mr. Chan said, that there has never been any such incidents, but we need to think of all the possibilities, and this will cover all angles. Any other questions? If not, we have completed the clause by clause. Now, is the legislative arrangement. Well, now that we have completed the clause by clause today, on the 24th of April, a report will be made to the House Committee. The ending time of the scrutiny is on the 15th, and if you would like to make any amendments, you will have to give notice before the 28th of April. The administration will resume, we'll propose the resolution on the 6th of May. If you're all right with it and there is no other business, meeting adjourned.